3 days ago, this man made headlines when he claimed he was swallowed by a whale, but is he telling the truth? On June 12, 2021, Richard Packard was lobster diving off the coast of Cape Cod. He was about 45 feet deep when he said it felt like a truck hit him and everything went dark. At first, he thought he had been eaten by a great white shark. That's when he said he realized he was in the mouth of a humpback whale. But here's the thing, it is literally impossible to be swallowed by a humpback whale. Not only do they have no interest in eating humans, but their throats are about the size of a human fist. Now it is possible that Richard was engulfed by a whale before it realized its mistake and spit him out within 30 seconds. But it did not swallow him. Also, the chances of everything in his story actually happening are about 1 in a billion. And he only suffered a dislocated knee and some soft tissue damage, which is also very suspicious. Here are some photos taken right before disaster, part 27. This photo was taken at the Burning Man festival. Aaron Mitchell thought it would be a good idea to run straight into the burning effigy. And just as you would think, he burned to death. And this is the last photo ever taken of him. This photo shows 14-year-old Keith Sapsford. He hid in the wheel compartment of a flight heading from Sydney to Japan. The photo was captured by John Gilspin, who was testing out his new camera lens, when he accidentally captured the last moments of Keith's life. Geraldine thought it would be a good idea to go on a hiking expedition all by herself, but she ended up going missing, and it wasn't until 2 years later when her body was finally found. She had likely died from starvation and exposure to the elements. She tried to text her husband to contact authorities, but none of them went through. And this was the last photo of her taken before her hike. This guy bit himself with a snake every day until something horrific happened. His name is Steve Ludman, and he's turned himself into a real-life science experiment. When he was 17, he made it his mission to mutate his cells through snake venom. One day he bought a bunch of venomous snakes and started experimenting on himself by injecting the venom into his skin. At first, everything was great, and Steve began feeling almost superhuman. He did this for 4 years until one day he got extremely sick. Steve was rushed to the hospital with a strange illness and was not expected to live. Doctors gave him a 1% chance of survival, and after 3 weeks of no improvement, his girlfriend did something drastic. She snuck into his hospital room and administered him Cobra snake venom. But little did she know that would change his life forever. Steve woke up and made a full recovery just hours later. And to this day he's immune to snake venom and cannot feel pain. This man cheated death 7 times, but what happened to him after will shock you. His name is Franz Selleck. When he was 33 years old, his train crashed into a river, killing 17 people, but he managed to survive. 1 year later, he was flying on an airplane when the plane doors blew open and he blew out with it. And believe it or not, he survived by landing on a haystack. 3 years later, he was on a bus that plunged into a river, killing 4 people, but not him. When he was 41, his gas tank exploded, but he managed to react in time and escape. Just 1 year later, he was in another bus accident that killed 2 people, but of course he somehow managed to survive. But in 2003, his life changed forever. In 2003, he went on to win the lottery and become a millionaire. He truly is the most lucky person ever. Doctors thought this 5-year-old girl had a tumor, but when they took one look at her x-ray, they found out the horrifying truth. Back in 1933, in a small town located in Peru, a baby mysteriously showed up at the front door of the local orphanage. Nobody had the slightest idea of where the baby came from. But later that week, a young couple adopted her and named her Lina. But as Lina grew older, the townspeople feared her, claiming she was possessed. Years went by of this, but on Lina's 5th birthday, she noticed a strange bump at the bottom of her stomach. She told her parents, but they just laughed it off, assuming she was imagining things. Months and months passed, and her stomach grew bigger every day. Finally, her parents took her to the doctors, where they decided to run some tests. But when they took one look at her x-rays, they could not believe their eyes. Doctors found out she was 9 months pregnant and removed the baby immediately, making her the youngest confirmed mother in the world. These conjoined brothers who are attached at the hip do not want to be separated. Shivanath and Shivram Sahu are conjoined twins from India who are attached at the waist. The twins share 2 legs and 4 arms. but have separate hearts and brains, and despite sharing a body, they actually live a pretty normal life. They're able to shower, eat, and dress themselves, and they even found out a way to ride their bike to school together. However, life is about to get a lot more complicated for the twins, as doctors say they can't actually be separated. If they tried to, the weaker one, Shivanat, would most likely die. Shivram, the stronger one, would most likely retain both legs and live a normal life. But the twins say even if they could afford the surgery, they wouldn't do it, because any challenge they face in life, they want to face together. What Pablo Escobar did when his daughter asked him for a unicorn was crazy and will shock you. Just in case you don't already know, Pablo Escobar was rich. In fact, one time his daughter was cold, so he grabbed all the paper that was around him and burned it to keep her warm. That paper was $2 million worth of cash. But when his daughter asked him for a unicorn, he couldn't exactly get one because they're not real. But this man is not gonna let reality get in his way. So one day he got his men to bring him a white horse. But a unicorn has a horn and wings. So Pablo Escobar had his men staple a horn and colorful wings onto that horse. Literally stapled it. But unfortunately, the horse died from infection. This man was attacked by a shark, but instead of killing him, it actually ended up saving his life, and you won't believe how. In 2015, Eugene took his girlfriend and his 2 kids to California for a family vacation. As him and his daughter swam off the shores of Huntington Beach, he could sense something was wrong. Instantly, he felt a sharp pain in his back and he was pulled down to the bottom of the ocean. A great white shark had attacked him and wasn't letting him go. But somehow Eugene managed to escape to the surface. He barely made it to shore and was bleeding everywhere. There was a massive gash in his back, but eventually it stopped bleeding. And Eugene didn't really want to ruin his family vacation, so he decided to not go to the hospital and just wait to get it checked out at home. A week later, when they arrived back at home, Eugene finally decided to go to the hospital. But when doctors scanned Eugene's x-rays, they could not believe their eyes. Doctors found a cancerous tumor, and thankfully they were able to remove it in time. Here's what people from 100 years ago thought the world would look like today. First off, they thought we would have automatic moving sidewalks. Next, they thought we would have roofs over our cities to protect us from the weather. And speaking about weather, they thought we would have weather controlling machines. Next up is video calls, which they actually did get right. Next, they thought we would walk on water with the help of balloons. Next, they thought we would have flying taxis, which I really do hope we get one day. The NFL has hired private investigators to stop this man because he has broken into the Super Bowl 35 times. And I promise you are not gonna believe the Hall of Fame picture of him I show you at the end. The thing about Dion Rich is that he is a great talker. So he has snuck into parties at the Playboy Mansion and met tons of famous people, including NFL players. So before Super Bowl I, he found out where the bus was gonna drop off the Kansas City Chiefs. He simply got there before them, put on a team jacket, and walked into the locker rooms. And he was hooked. After that, he snuck into almost every Super Bowl using disguises. Until the NFL started seeing pictures of him at every Super Bowl, so they started to look out for him. No problem though, because he was friends with some Denver Broncos before Super Bowl 12. He got a ride with them and stayed on the sidelines. The Cowboys ended up winning, but they got this photo of Dion Rich carrying the Cowboys head coach. This girl was abandoned by her parents and raised by wild dogs. Oksana Malaya was only 3 years old when she was neglected by her alcoholic parents who left her outside one night. With the night being cold, she crawled to the closest thing that could provide her with warmth and shelter, which was the dog kennel. The next morning, her parents didn't even notice she was missing, so she ended up living in the dog kennel, surviving off of the food scraps the dogs left over. Even though she would see humans from a distance and occasionally crawl on all fours into her house like a stray, humans were no longer her species. Slowly, Oksana became one of the pack, and it wasn't until 5 years later when a neighbor notified the police that a little girl was being raised by wild dogs. By the time she was rescued, she lost all ability to speak and was running on all fours like a dog. Now at the age of 34, she lives in a home for the mentally disabled and is said to have the mental capacity of a 6-year-old. This little girl suddenly passed away, but what her mom found in a secret letter will make you cry. 12-year-old Taylor was just like any other girl her age. One day she was doing homework when suddenly she felt a strong pain in her chest. She then collapsed to the floor and her mom called 911. Taylor was then rushed to the hospital in critical condition. The doctors discovered she had severe pneumonia and she slipped into a coma. And a few days later she sadly passed away. Her mother was devastated, but as she went to go clean her room, she found a secret letter that she had written. The letter was actually a message to herself that she was supposed to open in 2023. She talked about her hopes, dreams, and her relationship with God. Her mother was so inspired by this that she actually wrote a book on it. This man discovered he was married to twins when one of them got into a car accident. Charlie Bernard lived in Florida in 1984. While there, he met a girl named Amanda Hopkins who went to the same college. They started dating, and after only 2 years they moved in together and got married. But soon after, Charlie began to notice strange behavior from Amanda, like day-to-day mood swings and forgetfulness. One night while Charlie was home alone, he got a call from the police telling him that Amanda was in a car accident and was at the hospital in critical condition. But just as he was about to head to the hospital, he heard the front door open. He was speechless to see Amanda walk in, but she was confused at his reaction. Charlie then explained to her the phone calls he had just received about her. Hearing what happened to Amanda, she burst into tears and told him the truth. Her name was Joy and she was Amanda's twin sister. When Amanda got married to Charlie, they didn't want to lead different lives, so they decided they would take turns being Amanda. This boy claimed he remembered his past life until his parents discovered he wasn't lying. A Syrian boy named Arius was born with a particular red birthmark across his forehead. As soon as he could speak, he explained to his parents that he had already lived a past life as another man, claiming he was murdered with an axe by his own neighbor. It turns out a man in their village had gone missing years earlier and the neighbor was the prime suspect. So Arius and his parents went to the neighbor's house to find out the truth. When the neighbor opened the door, he turned white as a ghost, claiming he was innocent. But Arius demanded the neighbor to come with them as he knew where his own body was buried. Arius led them miles from the village to a specific spot under a tree and they started digging, but you won't believe what they found underneath. They found a skull that was cracked exactly where Arius's birthmark was. Everyone was shocked and the neighbor was later arrested and sentenced to death. This girl's dad offered $128 million to any guy who can marry her. Gigi Chao is the daughter of a Chinese billionaire, and even though she's never had trouble attracting guys, she's a lesbian and her dad doesn't like that. So in an attempt to make his gay daughter straight, he offered $128 million to any guy that can make Gigi find them attractive. Even though 20,000 males from all around the world showed interest, Gigi rejected them all. She told her father that she'll marry a man when he marries a man, and now she's an advocate for the LGBT community. This man was frozen in ice for 3 days and you won't believe what happened to him. His name is David Blaine and he went inside a block of ice for 3 days, with no food and only one tube supplying him with air and water. At the 61-hour mark, he was beginning to lose consciousness. But he couldn't go to sleep because if he leaned on the ice, he would have gotten severe frostbite. Unfortunately, this led him to have extreme hallucinations. Near the end of the stunt, he called his girlfriend over, but she was immediately pulled away. This made him think that he was dead and that she couldn't see him. After 63 hours, they decided to cut him out, but they said he was so delusional he tried to grab the chainsaw. He finally made it out, but he was so physically and emotionally tired that he couldn't walk or talk. David was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, and after 1 month of therapy, he finally made a full recovery. This guy raised his arm and hasn't put it down for 40 years. His name is Amar and he has kept his arm above his head since 1979. He decided to raise his arm and keep it there to disconnect him from all the luxuries of mortal life. He said he felt extreme pain when he first raised his arm, but now he doesn't feel it at all. The muscles in his arms have atrophied so much he couldn't use his arm even if he wanted to. His arm is stuck in this position and will continue to be for the rest of his life.
3, 2, 1.
You could have the ability to do this. About 8% of people can. This skill is called voluntary nystagmus, where your eyes move side to side so fast it looks like they're vibrating. If you want to find out how to do this, listen carefully. First, you need to hold your finger about a foot in front of you. Now bring your finger closer until it's almost blurry. At that point, shift your focus between your finger and the background behind it really fast. This will cause your eyes to shake. Comment if you tried it.
Here are some terrifying things about Disney that you didn't know about. Number 1. Disney's secret underground tunnels. You heard me right. Right beneath the Disney parks is a vast network of tunnels. These tunnels are used by the workers to get around the park easier and faster. But some kids have accidentally found these tunnels and actually gotten lost down there. Number 2. Spreading ashes around the park. It is actually a pretty common occurrence that Disney park visitors will spread the ashes of their loved ones around the Disney parks. But the creepiest part is the most common place people spread the ashes is in the Haunted Mansion ride, which has led the ride to actually become very haunted. So haunted actually that thousands of people every year claim to see this same ghost boy at the end of the ride crying for his mom.